Loud and Quiet presents Midnight Chats.
Ja, herzlich willkommen bei Midnight Chat.
Thank you for the introduction, John Grant. And here we go again. Thursday night, it's late, and we're back with another one of those midnight chats. Greg from Loud and Quiet here. And if your interests fall into the very niche Venn diagram that displays the overlapping interests of Tracy Thorn, high-speed roller coasters, and the grammatical intricacies of the Icelandic language, then welcome to what's most definitely your dream podcast. For everyone else, well, there's a bit in what you're about to hear where I basically fall off my chair when John Grant showed me a very funny photo of himself on an amusement park ride on his 50th birthday. I've already banged on in recent episodes about how the best way to support this podcast is to subscribe, rate, and comment wherever you're listening to us. But even better still is that you just tell your friends and family. Maybe next time there's an awkward silence in the conversation, just blurt it out and just tell people that you like Midnight Chats. But I'm not going to labour that point tonight, and I'm just going to get straight on to tonight's guest. And fact is, when we're researching these podcasts, which we do research, we tend to try and rummage around in the small footnotes of an artist's story to try and find some gold nuggets to ask them about. And John Grant is a gift in that respect because he's done so many, and I don't really like using this word, but quirky things during his career. He's had an extraordinary journey from his very strict religious upbringing in the US through to his time in the alt rock band The Czars, and then following that battling personal addictions, and later launching a very successful solo career, and even gone on to write songs for the likes of Robbie Williams. Basically too much to fit into a relatively short podcast, but I do ask him about being nominated for a Brit and writing the Icelandic entry for Eurovision, so don't worry. He has a new album coming out in October, and it's called Love is Magic, and it's about the beauty and absurdity of life. John was off to an awards ceremony that night that we caught up to present one of his great influences with a prize. That's where we pick up, and things end with him telling me about a song on this new album which features a swear word that we've never heard on the podcast before. So that's just a warning in case you have any small children listening nearby. Anyway, until next Thursday, when we'll be back, this is Midnight Chats, episode 55, with John Grant lying on a painful-looking sofa, but staying committed to his decision for a full 40 minutes. Perfect. That is sounding good, John.
I'm even going to lay down a little.
John, welcome to Midnight Chats.
Thank you. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
You look nice and relaxed now.
Thank you.
We're recording this for people listening. We are in a little studio in East London, and we've got like a small sofa which looks very similar to one that was in my grandmother's house for many years.
I bet hers was comfortable.
Is that not comfortable? Can you feel the frame through those
yeah.
very old looking cushions?
Yeah. Yes. It is not comfortable at all, actually.
Yeah, when you stand up, you're going to be feeling it.
I think it would be too painful for me to try and change positions at this point.
I've committed. I'm in now.
Impossible. Yeah.
How are you doing?
I'm fine. Like I told you before, it's a stressful day, but, who's not having a stressful day?
You're off to an award ceremony tonight.
I am. I'm presenting Tracy Thorn with an award tonight. Some sort of icon type thing.
The AIM Awards, which, if people haven't come across that, is an awards that celebrates independent music.
Yes.
Well, you've worked with Tracy before, but that's exciting to be able to reward her genius, basically.
Yeah. Yes. I've decided that tonight I shall compare her to the Mississippi River in my speech, or whatever body of water made the Grand Canyon. Steady, consistent, creating landscapes of incredible sonic beauty.
That's perfect.
I think
Do you
that's
want
really
to
good.
You've got that written down, right?
I do.
Okay, good.
Don't you think that's good?
That's brilliant. She's got a book coming out next year. It landed on my desk the other day.
Really? Another one?
Yeah. So but not till like February or something.
She's so smart and clever, and her command of the English language fills me with shame. She's quite amazing. Yeah.
What are award ceremonies like? Are they things like that? Are they like terrifying? Are they exciting? Are they?
There's nothing good about it.
No.
Except that moment when you get to present them with that award on that stage.
Right.
But everything else around it is an absolute nightmare. The dinner, I mean, I'll be sitting there with Ben and Tracy, so it'll be great. There'll be some waiter that looks like a young fucking Treat Williams or something, serving, and I'll be mistaking his professionalism and hospitality for, interest in a life lived together, and it'll all end in crocodile tears.
Other ones you've been to before, did you do, when you were nominated for a Brit Award here a few years ago, did you go to the Brits?
I did.
What was that like? Because that's a whole nother
That was
scale,
tortuous. Yeah.
was it? Okay.
Yeah, because it just goes on and on and on and on and on. And I lost to Bruno Mars, which is fine because he's very good. I think he's very good at what he does. Great voice, great personality. But yeah, and I also met Boy George that night, which was lovely. And he was really sweet and kind, and so it was really good for me to meet him. And then but I had this suit on, and I don't know, I don't feel terribly comfortable at those things. It's not my bag, baby.
You mentioned language and command of language before. Now, you speak 5 languages?
Yeah, probably 4 or 5.
Okay. We've got listeners all over the world for Midnight Chats,
Mhm.
but we've never been able to, or I'm too I'm linguistically incompetent. So for people like living in Germany or Spain, we know that we've got listeners there. We've never had somebody on the podcast before that's been able to speak so many languages.
Uh-huh.
So if we were to say like welcome to Midnight Chats to people listening in Germany, what would I have to say?
Ja, herzlich willkommen bei Midnight Chat.
That sounds better, doesn't it?
Ja. Das ist eine totale Freude, mit euch zu reden heute Abend.
What was the additional...
Liebe Zuschauer, liebe Zuhörer. Yeah.
You're obviously like a fan of language in general. And when did you know that you had an aptitude for learning new languages?
I guess it was my senior year in high school in the States, which is your last year before you go on to college. That was the first year that German was offered at my high school, and I was a big Nina Hagen fan, and for that reason I signed up for German because I wanted to translate those Nina Hagen lyrics, be able to understand what she was talking about. And then I happened to have a great teacher as well, who sort of took me under wing. She saw that I was struggling that year, and that was the one thing that I latched onto that year, that I really excelled at it, and I got an easy A in the class. Or maybe I had a B because even though I was really good at it, I just I was still always a bad student, but still sort of effortlessly got a B or whatever it was that I got. And she was somebody who sort of, like, she would go to a cafe with me on the weekend and speak German to me or talk to me about German. She was wonderful. Her name was Pia Snyder, and I've lost touch with her, unfortunately, but she was lovely. She moved back to Pennsylvania or something and back in the 80s, and unfortunately lost touch.
Do you subscribe to the idea that some people have a natural talent for learning other languages, or do you think that everybody has the ability to do that?
There's so many different aspects about learning a language. I mean, pronunciation, like the ability to hear, and phonetics is one thing. Everybody wants to be able to speak like a native and not have an accent. That's something that I've always been particularly good at. But it gets harder as you age and your mouth gets lazy. And then there's also, grammar. There's also, listening comprehension. I really feel like it's important to understand the grammar inside and out if you truly want to master a language, because then you can have total control over the language if you know all the rules. and then you can really express your personality and your sense of humor and all these important things in that language if you have that type of knowledge of it. Just talking to people and immersing yourself in the language is a great way to go. But I think you need both. So I think you should be out there talking with people, just interacting, immersed in the society, living there. If you can't do that, these days there's all sorts of things you can do. You can read out loud in the language. You can look up things on YouTube. You can watch the news in that language. You can watch television shows in that language. Everything's on YouTube. So you can immerse yourself in that language to a great extent. If you can create that for yourself at home these days quite easily. I think it's better to speak correctly and idiomatically and colloquially than to speak, perfect with a perfect accent. I think anybody would agree with that. But of course, one falls in love with a language because one likes the way that it sounds, and one would also like to sound that way, right?
Yeah.
When speaking it. But if you can't overcome your accent, don't worry about that. Just do the work, do the drills, do the legwork, and it will happen for you eventually. Just put in the work, and you will make progress in the language, and you'll make fast progress in the language. There's times, there's these key moments when you feel like you feel like you're actually going backwards, and that you know less than you did when you started. And that's, I find, at least I wonder to myself and think that it's probably the brain absorbing a huge amount of information and putting it in order and making sense of it, so that those times when you feel like you're actually going backwards, your brain's just doing a lot of work, and you need to just relax and maybe take a break. And you'll find that when you come back to it, you will have made progress, and lots of progress, a lot more than you think. You're always further along than you think you are. But don't ever allow yourself to get frustrated and think, I'm never going to be able to do this, because you definitely can do it. There's a lot of people that say they have no talent for learning the language. I'm not sure I believe that. I mean, certainly we all have aptitudes or talents for different things. But I feel like if you put the work in, you can get to a very comfortable level in any language.
Is Icelandic the most recent language that you've learned?
Yeah, that's the most recent one for me, and that's the hardest thing I've ever done.
Oh, really? Why is that? Why has that been so much more difficult? Is it because it doesn't follow as similar formula to some of the other languages that you've learned structurally?
Well, it's very similar to German actually, but it's still much more complicated. For example, in German, you don't have very many forms for each word. Let's see, you'd have, for German you're gonna have like 5 forms for a word, maybe. In the different cases, like der Mann, den Mann, des Mannes. That has to do with the article as well, but you have a plural form, die Männer, den Männern, which is the plural, the dative plural, where you just add an N to the plural, or an EN to the plural, depending on what the word is. And in Icelandic you have 16 forms for every word, so that's 11 more forms, at least. And then, for example, you also have masculine, feminine, and neutral nouns in Icelandic. You have a very complex verb system, like French and German and Spanish and Italian and Portuguese, all the Romance languages, with the subjunctive and compound tenses and conditional. And Russian, for example, the verb system is also quite difficult because they deal with something called aspect in the verb. It's quite complicated, but the verb forms themselves aren't as varied. And they just have one little particle, bui, for the conditional tense, which you just add to the past tense of the verb. You add that particle, and that becomes the conditional, right, or the subjunctive. Yeah, so Icelandic is just, and then the pronunciation is the hardest I've ever dealt with, much harder than German or Russian. And that has to do with, they say that for English speakers, the pronunciation is particularly difficult for native speakers of English. I don't know why that is. I certainly do believe it.
Yeah.
Because I've never struggled with pronunciation like I do in Icelandic. I have to say things, I always had to read things out loud over and over and over to get them. And at the beginning, you sort of exaggerate sounds because you're getting your mouth to start to move in that way, because you need to retrain your mouth for each language. it's important to remember that your mouth doesn't move the same in those languages. And we don't move our mouths when we speak our language because we've learned to speak our language as easily as possible, and so we're very lazy with it. Well, that's what other people do too, and they're very lazy with things, and that's what turns into dialects and different accents, because we're just trying to figure out a way to say things as quickly as possible.
Do you spend the majority of your time still in Iceland now? Because obviously you move around plenty when you're on tour and things like that, but is that the main base?
That's where I'm based, but I'm not there very much at all.
Yeah. What is it about the character of Icelandic people that you like? I've been a couple of times, and as well as it being obviously a beautiful country and spectacular, once you get out of Reykjavik and travel around the island, it is stunning. But I found the Icelandic people fascinating because of their resilience and their sense of humour and their just various characteristics. I just thought they were fascinating people. What characteristics of Icelanders do you like?
I like their humor, and they're quite cheery and friendly. I mean, you really got to learn the language if you want to crack that nut, if you want to get into that society. Mm-hmm. Same thing with, any language, I suppose, or if you really want to get to know the people, you must know their language. But I love colloquial Icelandic. I love the way they express themselves in a very clever, funny way. But I don't know. It's that way with every single language. They're all very different, and Icelanders are pretty relaxed. They're sort of laid back. But that would, if anything, that would fill me with resentment, because I should probably relax a little bit more. But they've got sort of like a Spanish or Italian relaxedness to them, a relaxed attitude, combined with the Scandinavian style and other Scandinavian traits. Like, it's a strange combination of reservedness but also like they have a phrase, "Þetta reddast," which is one of the first things that you learn when you go there. "Þetta reddast," which means that it'll work out. It'll work itself out. It'll get taken care of. Don't worry about it. Right. When applied to business, that's not too exciting for the consumer.
Yeah.
But as far as everyday lifestyle, they have figured out a way to thrive in this sort of difficult to thrive in environment.
Absolutely. Have you done an Icelandic winter?
Yeah, I've done several of them now, and they're hard. They're difficult.
Yeah, so again, for anybody who hasn't visited Iceland, it gets dark approximately what time in the afternoon in deep winter?
Yeah, in deep winter, it's you're only going to have like an hour of light, in December, and that's just twilighty, So you really got to watch your vitamin D intake and make sure that you're getting vitamin D. Get one of those lamps.
Yeah.
Take a supplement. Go to the gym. Make sure you're moving. Exercise. Eat right. A lot of people up there just go whole hog into the sugar. Seems like Scandinavians really struggle with sugar consumption. Okay. Well, they don't seem to be struggling actually with it. But
I see what you mean. But yeah, in those deep winters, we need to get some energy levels going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and sugar's a killer when it comes to that. It's not doing anybody any favors. No. It's hard.
A few years back, did you enjoy the experience of collaborating on the Icelandic entry for Eurovision?
Oh yeah, that was weird. At first I wanted to hear what they were doing because I didn't really want to be involved in Eurovision because I'm not really into that style, and I don't really get I don't like to watch it either.
I was going to say, had you followed it up to that point? Was it something you were like aware of?
When I was in Sweden, I watched it with everybody else, and just sort of like a little bit horrified. But ABBA came from there, so it can't be that bad. But these guys that asked me to do this, to translate this song for them, I just really loved the song they were doing. I was surprised by what they were doing. It was like this punk pop, hit. And it was talking about children, like it was encouraging children to do away with prejudice and not judge other people, and And I really liked the message they were giving, and I really liked the people that wrote the song, and I liked the style of the song because it was quite different than other things that I'd heard. So I said yes.
Yeah.
So yes, I did enjoy it.
On the night of the awards, did you go to it or did you watch it in Iceland with other people watching it, kind of cheering them along, sort of thing?
I don't know if I saw it. I think I might have been busy, like out and about, touring or something at the time. I don't remember seeing them perform it. I just remember that I kept asking, how did they do? How did they do? How did they do? And I think they came in like 13th or something.
That's respectable. That's
Yeah.
like mid tables as such.
But Iceland really wants to win it. They haven't won it before. you know.
Right.
And so I wasn't sure. I really thought I thought they should win with that song, but I think I was skeptical because it was just too good.
Yeah. That's the thing with Eurovision. It gets things that, it doesn't matter if you've written a good song. It's often about the other things that surround it, just the quirkiness of it, or the stage show, or what eccentricity you put on your performance.
Yeah,
That
it's so many different factors that you can't plan for it, and you just you don't know what's gonna happen.
Away from talking about Iceland, how has 2018 been for you so far? Was the start of the year finishing Love Is Magic, which is the new album? What's been happening in 2018 so far?
Yeah, I just was working on the record until finished it in March or April. Yeah, then I had some time off. I had a little bit of time off in Iceland, and then I have just started out on the promo thing now. The machine is getting going again, and soon we'll be, rehearsing for the shows, and then at the end of October, the first show will happen, and it's just all very quick, and it just goes very quick, and it's crazy. I can't believe it.
I read that you celebrated your birthday earlier this year by going to a theme park and going on some roller coasters.
I did. I
got very jealous.
Oh yeah, it was amazing. I went to Cedar Point, which I consider to be the best, one of the, if not the best theme park in the world or amusement park in the world, then one of the very best. There's another one in the States called Magic Mountain outside of Los Angeles, which also boasts an impressive amount and quality of roller coaster.
Okay.
But Cedar Point was just incredible. It has a lot of the, they're all competing. It breaks the rules, and then somebody else breaks them, and then it brings something back and breaks all the rules. They had a new one this year called Steel Vengeance.
I saw a picture of this earlier, and with people looking kind of terrified on it. It looked a bit rickety.
Yeah, it does look like it sometimes when you're watching it. You can see the structure moving back and forth.
Yeah.
But it was the most incredible thing I've ever been on in my life. It is truly the best roller coaster I've ever been on. I could not believe it. I went on it 6 times. Yeah.
Get off, straight back in the queue.
Yeah.
What was so good about Steel Vengeance?
Well, it's quite fast, so it's going like 75 miles an hour.
Yeah, that is fast for a roller coaster.
It's very fast.
Yeah.
There's ones there that go, there's one there called Millennium Force that's 100 feet higher than Steel Vengeance, and it goes 93 miles an hour the whole time. It's just relentless.
Absolutely
That was
terrifying.
incredible. I went on that several times as well, like 3 times. And then there's another one called Top Thrill Dragster that goes from 0 to 120 miles an hour in 4 seconds. It's done with magnets, so you're just sitting there in the car, and then it shoots you like a rocket.
It pulls though.
It
Is
pulls.
That the sensation?
Yeah, but from 0 to 120 in 4 seconds, and then it rockets you 45 stories into the sky.
What's this one called?
Top Thrill Dragster.
Right.
And then there's one called King Ka in New Jersey, and I had actually ridden that one first,
Right.
and that's a little bit bigger.
Okay.
They broke the record that Cedar Point held with this one before.
Got it.
That thing took my breath away, like literally.
Sounds like it.
No, seriously, I thought I was gonna. That was almost too much, but it was incredible, and we got right back in line for that one and did it a second time right away.
Have you been to any of the British theme parks like your Alton Towers and Chessington World of Adventures?
No, I haven't yet.
It doesn't sound as exciting as Cedar Point, to be honest.
Well, these are the biggest and fastest in the world.
Yeah.
That's why it had to be there for me, you know. And I think, Alton Towers has some impressive coasters as well. They have Oblivion, which is like Valraven.
Yeah.
But Valraven is the biggest one of that type, that the drop coasters where they sort of let you hover with your legs dangling over the edge, that you can see the several 100-foot drop in front of you.
I've been on Oblivion, and we actually had to stop because the ride this is the worst thing that you want to hear when you're at a theme park.
Oh, yes.
Is when you get the message from somebody going, or a member of staff coming over the PA and saying, we're just temporarily going to have to just halt the ride because of a technical problem, and you're sat there and your legs are just dangling and you're kind of 6 foot.
You were
in the air.
dangling off the edge at that point?
We were in the where you get onto the ride and you're already in the harness, you're
Yes.
ready to go. That was the point where we were. So somebody was out there on the track, so to speak, dangling in midair. It wasn't us, but we heard the announcement and we were there for 25 minutes. So yeah.
Horrifying. Well, this one Valraven at Cedar Point, which the drop coaster, it was long.
Right.
I couldn't believe how long it was.
Okay.
I mean, it was incredible. That was one of my favorite ones as well. I have to say, I couldn't believe the sheer number of impressive coasters they have there.
It does sound good. Alton Towers, when I was growing up, they had this one called Nemesis that was announced.
Yes.
There was a big deal made about that when that came around.
I've heard of Nemesis.
Nemesis was good. Oblivion was better, I think.
What's Nemesis? Is it looping?
Yeah. It wasn't as fun as Oblivion because that is the one where you go in and you pull the harness over the top and your legs are dangling and you kind of you're flying around, your legs are above your head and everything else, and you're seeing the sky and there are just your shoes, which is quite exciting.
But that first drop is incredible. I don't know how much higher Valraven is than Nemesis. I mean, it's usually a few feet. I went to one in Germany just a few weeks ago. They have one called Der Krake, which is the Kraken.
The Kraken, I like it.
And it's a drop coaster like this, and it drops you into the mouth of the Kraken, which is just this circle of teeth. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, it sounds good.
But it was over in like 2 seconds. It was completely.
Oh, okay.
It was like a half or the third of the time of Valraven, which just seemed to go on forever, which is good for a coaster. But then at this German park, they had one called the Flight of the Demon, which was one of the ones where you dangle on either side of the track. And I have to say that one is obviously made by the same company that made the Gatekeeper in Cedar Point, Ohio.
Okay.
Which was just, it was fun, but it was just like riding in a really smooth, nice car. It wasn't particularly scary or anything.
Right.
It was beautiful. You're on the edge of the Lake Erie, and so you're just looking out over what looks like the ocean because they're so huge, those lakes. And it was fun, but just very chill. But that company built one for this park called, like I said, Flight of the Demon. Same coaster. You're with the harness, with your legs dangling on either side of the track. And wow, that was more impressive than the one at Cedar Point.
Okay.
It was really very cool.
What was your entry point into your love of theme parks? Was it like a Disneyland thing?
Yeah, I think Disneyland might have been the first one. Space Mountain.
Yeah, I think Thunder Mountain was my first one.
Okay. Was that Paris or?
Paris, Disneyland Paris, yeah.
Yeah, and I went to the one in, the one in California. Anyway, Disneyland is in California and Disney World is in Orlando, Florida.
Yeah.
Those are the two biggies out, So we went to the one in Disneyland in California, and then I think it was Cedar Point after that, because I grew up like 3-4 hours from Cedar Point.
Right. Okay.
So we had friends in Toledo, Ohio. Sometimes we would drive over from Michigan, and then we'd stay at their house and then go to Cedar Point the next day. And those were like some of the greatest memories I've ever had. And they still have three of the coasters there that were there when I went there in the 70s. So I hadn't been there since the 70s when I went this a month ago.
And that was a bit of a nostalgia trip as well then.
Yeah, it was a nostalgia trip. Because I was there with my I went there with my mother in the 70s, and so I have great memories of her from that. And of my sister and our friends, and it was amazing. But they didn't have anything like what they have now. I mean, it was just a different world.
Yeah.
The corkscrew was the biggest thing they had. And looking at the hill now, it looks like it looks like a tiny little child's.
Was that what we thought was the most exciting thing when we were
That was
here?
the biggest thing, and the adults thought it was scary too.
Yeah.
But now they have these monster things. I mean, have you seen a picture of Top Thrill Dragster?
No.
I mean, it's 45 stories high.
That's like half of the Shard in London or something, isn't it? That's ridiculous. That's enormous.
Oh, yeah.
Do you get the photos? You know, when you come out of the other side and then they say, "Do you want to buy this photo of you looking petrified?"
Yes.
Have you got
Got
a collection
lots
of
of
them? Have you?
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
They're expensive though,
If you
aren't
give
they?
me that phone, is the phone charging?
Let me have a little look.
If it's
here.
on, I can show you one right now that will surely
we've
delight
got
you.
it.
Of me on Flight of the Demon.
Hang on, I'm just getting John's phone so that he can show me a photo of him on Flight of the Demon.
I mean, people say I look like a demon from hell on it. Where's the damn thing?
Oh wow.
Look
That is absolutely fantastic.
Right?
That
That's what I did when I
I've
saw
got
it.
one word.
Yeah.
Gravity.
Yes.
Just like
Totally.
wow. Are you
Look at my beard. But people said I look like a demon from hell in that photo.
Is
And
this your friend next to you?
I just think it looks like a groan of horror coming out of me.
It looks
you know?
like you might be in pain, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's enjoyment pain. That is so good.
That girl next to me.
Yeah.
She was the one interviewing me that day.
Oh,
They
okay.
heard in Germany that I like roller coasters and took me
Right.
to the roller coaster park and then interviewed me afterwards.
Hey, that's a
was
dream.
so
That
cool.
is brilliant. Her hair is
Yeah, I'm
vertical.
talking to you, Alton Towers.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, what are we doing here for?
Yeah.
We should be doing this in
And
Alton Towers.
what about Thorpe?
Thorpe Park. Yeah, I
Don't
it's-
they have a big Woody there?
I think so. They do. The last thing I heard. Yeah.
You see the Skinny Puppy T-shirt here in this photo as well.
Ah, wonderful.
Yeah,
That is cool.
I just love this photo, and I like her. She looks like she's just floated in from yoga class, right?
Really, yeah. But her
hilarious.
hair is like vertical. It's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, it's amazing.
That's the highlight of my day so far. That's brilliant. Speaking of brilliant pictures, the front cover artwork of your new album,
Oh,
Love
yeah.
is Magic, is truly fantastic.
Thank you.
Definitely the best piece of artwork all year. If you're listening to this and you haven't seen it, just immediately go and have a look. It features yourself with a bird cage on your head.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about the day that you put together that artwork.
Well, I was really annoyed that day because, I was arriving in Paris, and at the hotel they were like, "Oh, we don't turn on the AC until June," and it was April, and it was, sizzling already. So as the spoiled American, you're really irritated by that. There's not a fan in sight, Yeah. Anyway, and so there's that, and then the shoot was like 10 hours long. So it was a grueling day of, just wandering around in front of, good-looking men in my pants, with them all fully clothed. And I just felt, fat and disgusting, and, you're in your fucking pants, and I didn't really enjoy that. But I always want to commit to the vision of the artist and the photographer. So, it's like, I don't give a shit if I'm miserable. I'm going to do it because I want it to be right. And it is right.
It's
You
very
know.
right. It's superb.
Scott King, designed that whole thing, and Johan, I keep forgetting the photographer's name because it's not even that difficult, but it's sort of a much trickier name than Scott King, but the photographer was great too. He had he understood what we were doing, and he got some great shots.
I'm not going to see a better album cover this year. Absolutely not. I've made my mind up already.
Well, thank you.
I should ask you some questions about this album because we've not really talked about it yet. We've been too busy talking about Alton Towers. Love is Magic. How was the process of making this? Because you travelled to two places that are almost certainly not like each other: Cornwall and Texas.
I was in Cornwall in St. Breward at Benj's studio, and which is this idyllic, beautiful place, at the foot of Bodmin Moor, nestled into the hillside there, and it's just absolutely incredible natural beauty there. And he has a beautiful house there, and he has this basement, with all these wonderful scents and modular scents, and it's truly a fairyland like playground,
Yeah.
fairy tale like surroundings. And you're never far from the coast down there. So there's, beautiful little day trips to be had when you can't stand being in the studio. But we just had so much fun. It was just criminal the whole time, It was super, super fun, and he's so incredible to work with. You know, and I really wanted to get the sounds right, so it was great to work with somebody that's a master of sound design like he is to help me get where I was going. And then I just sat there and composed, and then he was the engineer as well as, you know, constantly showing me what to do, or he was always doing all the poking around with the modulars, because I wanted to learn, but I wasn't down there to learn. I was down there to make music, so you know, it would have taken, you know, 10 years. So he's, you know, looks like a, you know, operator at a switchboard, you know, the whole time, and just very, very fast, and knows what to do, and knows those instruments inside and out, and has all the great classics. You know, he has an original 3C Moog modular, and a Buchla, and the CVS, the Putney, here from England.
It's like a museum of synths.
Yeah, and the ARP 2500, which is the most gorgeous thing you'll ever see. CS80 from Yamaha, which is not a modular synth, but probably the mother of all analog synths.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just incredible. You know, and things like Blade Runner were done on that synth with Vangelis. Or Vangelis, or however the hell one pronounces his name. Never know. And let's see what else. He also had an EMU modular, and a Surge modular. Just shocking. And I really fell in love with the Prophet VS from 1985, which is an incredibly beautiful instrument with incredible pad sounds. The most delicious pad sounds you're ever going to hear.
There's a song on the album called Smug Cunt.
Yes.
Which is a word that I've not said on this podcast before, but I have now.
Yes.
Is that about anybody in particular?
Originally, I was going to write it about Vladimir Putin, but I think it became a much broader thing. It became just like a term of exasperation when faced with these, you know, money-hungry, greedy, power-hungry narcissists of the world who will do anything, and, you know, the destruction of any person or anything in nature is second, you know, is just totally uninteresting to them. It simply doesn't matter. I think I've just expressed myself very poorly, but it's about, you know, extreme narcissism and people who go out into the world totally self-absorbed, without any self-awareness, looking to destroy, calculating. I don't know. So Donald Trump, I don't know. He barely fits in there, because I don't know if he's capable of being calculating. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't know the guy, but I hate this type of person. I don't like that. And, you know, it's I think you have to be careful, you know, judging other people, because unless you've walked in their shoes, but there's also a time for just raw reaction to what you perceive as absolutely disgusting in art, you know. And so, you know, the feelings of the moment are totally valid, and Smug Cunt is the only way I know how to describe it.
It's an album that sort of reflects on both the absurd and the beautiful. To my mind, at least, like, to find the absurd in everyday life feels very easy these days. You only have to just turn on the TV or...
Well, all you have to do is get out of bed.
Exactly. You don't
And
even
you
have
don't
to
even
open
have to
Twitter.
do that, actually.
Yeah, that's true, actually, yeah. You don't have to get out of bed to open the window to an absurd world. Is that, in a weird way, can you find any positives in that? As in, like, is it an inspiring thing that it can be so absurd? In the same way that, you know, like, comedy can be inspired by that. Can you be inspired to write a song about that?
Absolutely. I think that's exactly what I do. I think I find it, you know, it's like you don't know whether to laugh or cry, you know?
Exactly.
And I mean, if you don't laugh, you will cry, you know?
So you might as well laugh.
Yeah, you know. If you don't laugh, you would cry if you were capable of it still.
Midnight Chats is a Loud and Quiet podcast. Production by Emma Snook. Music courtesy of Gold Panda. Search Midnight Chats on iTunes for more episodes and to subscribe. For more information, visit loudandquiet.com.